Welcome to FM radio. No, just kidding. Hello, I'm Candid Frank Sinishi of National Lacrosse, National NLL Lacrosse Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now joining me as usual on NLL Lacrosse Talk, Gary Groob. Gary, week 5 has been canceled. Oh, there he is. He's frozen. You see that? Gary's frozen. So I knew that was going to happen. He was having problems a little bit here and there. So here we are in the middle of talking about Christmas week with the National Lacrosse League, and the gift is week 5 and it gets canceled. So, there was a game scheduled for tonight and it's not happening. And of course, week 5 means we're just partway through the season. We just got her going, and all of a sudden the season is canceled. So, not quite the Christmas gift we're all looking for. We have made it to the point where the season started, and we all knew that there was a distinct possibility that because of the winter and because of viruses and their proliferation in winter and the transmission, because we spend our time indoors more than we do outdoors, we don't have better ventilation. Not everybody has a HEPA filter attached to their furnace, so the heat just regenerates whatever goes into the air, and unfortunately that means that COVID is bugging our behinds. So anyway, lacrosse is canceled for week 5. I'm waiting to see if Gary shows up. It's not looking good. Gary's maybe I'll call him and see if we can get him to talk on the phone. What do you think? Let's see if we can do that. Let's see.
Hi, Frank.
Hi, Gary. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. I'm backstage. I believe. I think I am.
Yeah, you think you are? Well, then
I
Eduardo.
I don't know.
It's been brought to you by Rogers. Oh, there I am.
Eduardo probably took off for a second because, as a producer, he has things, he multitasks. He also is a parent.
Well, I'm going to keep that here just in case I lose you again. And
no. I got the phone here. We'll turn that off because the echo is. Anyway, I was just mentioning to the viewers that week 5 has been canceled. It was a year that we were so glad the season was starting. But we all had a suspicion that there might be a problem down the road. We've all been educated in the fact that viruses proliferate in cold weather, because of a lack of fresh air. And that's one way to avoid passing it along. And so we have recycled air in our homes and in places where we gather. Some places like airplanes, they refresh every 13 seconds or something. We don't have that luxury in a lot of places. So anyway, let's talk about the season thus far.
Okay. So far, we have seen some of the best lacrosse that I can remember. We have seen, let's start with goaltending. We have seen some great performances, and one that stands out in my mind is Frank Sigliano from the San Diego Seals, who became only the 4th goalie in NLL history to hold a team to 4 goals or less. That's astounding. And you're facing 60 shots, and 60 shots at about 120 miles an hour. But he held Colorado, a high-powered team, to 4 goals. They won 13-4. To me, that's amazing. We watched a heroin thing here in Hamilton, here in Toronto, here in Hamilton, when Zach Higgins of the Philadelphia Wings made a save off of Rob Hellier, and where physics took place. It was such a hard shot and hit the mask at the correct thing that the ball actually contorted to go in through the wire of the mask and actually, I believe, broke his nose, gave him a black eye, knocked him out of the game, that's for sure. He went down in a heap. I originally thought he got hit in the throat, but as it turned out, it went through the mask and hit him. So is going to crack down on what can be used for eye holes and what's the distance if they have to go to the regular cage like you do in hockey. To me, that was crazy.
Yeah, that's something that hockey had trouble with for a while too. Absolutely, when they were using what looked like midget masks, the wire mask, and the goalies, of course, have this delicate balance they have to figure out, and that is being able to see as wide a periphery as they can, and it's impossible to do so if the eye slits are too small. So right. It's a challenge. It's a challenge, and we've seen, we understand when we see goaltenders, we sometimes we take for granted that we think, as viewers, we think that they have every advantage that we would have sitting there. And there are a lot of challenges being goaltenders. That is one to concern yourself with. When your safety becomes a question, there has to be a better answer.
I agree. Most people say, well, they have too much equipment on anyways. And I've talked to Aaron Bold about it. We've talked to Dallas Elliott about it. But when it's something like this, maybe the pads are a bit big. Okay, fine, granted. But when it comes to a headshot, we're worried about players hitting each other in the head. But what about when, for something like this, where a ball can actually make it through? It was a scary scene. He went down like he'd been shot, and just that quickly for a while. And I imagine more stunned than anything. But of course, it's the last thing you expect, that the thing is going to go through your mask into your face, right? You have the mask on for that specific point. But yeah, it was a crazy event. Anyways, let's get on to some other big news. We had Dane Dobby, and his big news in the off seasons was to sign away from the championship Calgary Roughnecks, and where he'd spent his entire career, and he went to the San Diego Seals. They met each other, and San Diego won that thing 17-12. But the big news in that game was the Dobby factor. He scored 7 goals and added 2 assists, and made an exclamation point of what kind of a player he is. Now, if you have seen any pictures from that game, there was a couple of real good ones of him on how hard he had to work for these goals. These weren't just, run-of-the-mill, highlight reel goals. These were grind-em-out goals. He's sitting there with bandages and bloody, his jersey's bloodied. So he is your grinding type who also has the talent and skill to give you highlight reel goals. Does it hurt Calgary? Immensely. Now, he was the captain of that team, and they gave it to Curtis Dixon, who, in my opinion, is the only person who could wear the C other than Dobby on that team. Because they also lost Chad Cummings to the Panther City Lacrosse, and I believe he's the first captain in their history. And Chad is a fantastic defenseman, a big guy. I think he's 6'5", about 250, and a stay-at-home kind of defenseman. He's your transitional kind of guy, and he is bruising, and he will do great over in Panther City Lacrosse. And we also had a chance to see for the first time ever the Panther City team under Tracy Kelusky, head coach. Dan Teat is the offensive coach. And we've seen some bright sparks. They haven't put together a win yet, but in my opinion, they're real close. They have some fantastic talent. They just need a little bit of time to gel. And with a couple of off seasons and 2 sets of drafts under their belt, they have some really good players. They just need a bit of time. So I wouldn't worry about them in the slightest. They're going to be a solid team. But we would have Thunderbirds tonight. We would have Thunderbirds Roughnecks tonight, but obviously that's canceled. 5 games in all were not canceled but postponed into February. We had the Thunderbirds versus the Roughnecks. We have the Riptide versus the Mammoth, which was supposed to be on New Year's Eve. And then we have I believe the January 7th games are on. So it's really only 2 games. Sorry, my mistake. Just 2 games that are postponed.
Week 5.
Yeah, week 5. But because of it being New Year's Eve, they only had 2 games scheduled. And that's, for a change, that's the league looking out for its players and its fans, because there hasn't been any mandate to shut it down. They haven't had that many cases as of yet. But they want to keep safe, and it's a refreshing thing that the almighty dollar didn't rule this decision, that health and safety did.
Let's keep in mind, people do need to cross the border, and lacrosse is a very, we all know about hockey, but lacrosse even more so, the transition that players have to make, not only on the floor, but they have to make it at airports.
Well, it's also that the teams now, as of this afternoon, just before we came on air, I was watching the head doctor in Ontario. They've knocked the limits down again in big venues to 1,000 people or 50% capacity in concerts, sporting events, etc., whichever one is less. So it's looking like there's no more than 1,000 people going to be going to a game anytime soon. So the teams have some thinking to do on what they're going to do in a couple of weeks' time as well, because I don't see that restriction being lifted anytime soon.
Yeah, it's well. Let's talk about lacrosse. Okay, so how does this impact on the players? The players and the organizations, they came into this season grateful that they had an opportunity to start the season. Everybody, I said, not with tongue in cheek, seriously, everybody knew that this could very well happen. But now that it's happened, how hard is it for me as a person to not feel like, oh no, here we go again? So how does this affect the players? I mean, staying in shape, being dedicated to being ready to go at a moment's notice, that's got to be really hard, Gary.
I think so. I think it's more difficult than in previous, where you had, a couple of summers, winters, then you knew that they were going to try it again this time around, and you had a time frame. Here they have to try and stay in shape, even though there won't be any practices, obviously, and there won't be any games, obviously, for the short time. Hopefully by the 7th and 8th, they've been able to get it together. I have my reservations on that one, but I have fingers crossed that we are going to be playing some games, because up until this point, really, if there's ever been a time it's shown parity in the league, this season's shown what kind of parity, as well as what kind of talent level is in the league. You look at, just for an example, you look at week 1, and you had 7 games, and I believe 5 of them were 1-goal games, and a couple of them went into overtime. That's pretty incredible. Those are nail biters, mid-season to end of season form games to start the season. This is on guys who really haven't gotten together, because they really didn't have much of a training camp. They had a couple of weeks in which they were able to get together a couple of times a week, maybe, and put together these teams, and they were off to the races, and it's like we never missed a beat. And of course, all the fans were very, very receptive, especially week 1. Week 1, we saw all kinds of things. A lot of teams had a lot of time to market their first games, and in week 2, between the Omicron being the variant of flavor of the day, I guess, and not really having a chance to market much more of the season, attendance dropped all over the league. I think more about Omicron than about teams marketing, to tell you the truth. But that's neither hither nor yon. We'll see how it plays out. Still, the boisterous fans were still there, even though they weren't in as excessive numbers as previous. But these teams play their all, and I expect that these guys are professionals. They know what it takes, and they will be ready to go at a moment's notice. Hopefully, ready, to jump on a plane at any time. But guys like Aaron Bold have been posting on their Instagram that no practice, no problem. Off to the gym I go. So these guys are they're professional through and through. So they know what it takes to stay in shape.
So the difficulty is a challenge, and a challenge that they're willing to meet. That's it just speaks to the professionalism that you spoke about. I understand there's some news coming out of the Brampton Excelsiors.
Well, yeah, it's been going on. There's been a group called the Excelsiors Lacrosse Legacy Association, ELA for short, and they have been trying to overthrow the board of directors of the Brampton Excelsiors. So much so, holding their own meetings and having their own elections and calling themselves the official board. Up until recent, the board of directors have chosen not to get into a war of words with them, and with good reason, because really you don't need to go and you sound like a schoolyard fight, especially with an upstart group. Now these people are all Excelsior life members. They're former board members. They're of good standing people, and for the most part, we're all on the same page. Where the sticking point is was when the major Excelsiors, the MSL team, was sold to Joe Norton of Bug Juice fame, and it was fine up until the 3-year term of his contract, and he was able to move the team, and he did, and he moved them to Owen Sound. Now you're talking about a 150-year plus franchise with a long history of championships, of lacrosse in Brampton, of everything. And there were a lot of people up in arms, and I understand it totally. But business is business. It was sold to Joe Norton because the team just couldn't be run anymore as a city-run team. There wasn't funds. So really, it couldn't be a competitive team with teams like Six Nations paying their players, teams like Peterborough paying their players. Brampton could not be a team that was going to generate championships and in turn generate interest with the youth. And, inside the games, there weren't a whole lot of people and there wasn't a lot of revenue. So originally, they was sold to Joe Norton with the hope and with the nobody really thought it would move, that he would run the team, he would own the team, we would be the day-to-day run, and they and he had the financial thing there and make this team viable again. He was known as a marketing genius, and he was going to market the team and all kinds of things here. And again, after 3 years of taking losses, he moved them to Owen Sound. So when this all came down to 2018 and the vote of who was on what side for the vote, and this was a 13-2 vote in favor of selling the team to Joe Norton. So it wasn't like that this was just a 50-50 split. It was a 13-2 vote. It was also a recorded vote for the first time in at least 20 years, as from what I'd seen, that nobody remembers the last time there was a recorded vote. They knew what they were voting on. Now, this was prior to me getting on the board, so I didn't have anything to do with this vote. And like to say I had something to do, I don't. The vote, like I say, went towards Joe Norton. There was a press release sent out, and nobody seemed to have any problems with it when he became the owner, and it was in Brampton, and he was taking the losses. But when he decided that Owen Sound might be a better place, because he also owns the senior B team, the Owen Sound North Stars, and he was getting pretty good attendance and a lot of vibrancy from the community. So he thought, why not put the both teams under the one umbrella, and he moved them up there. Simple. But after enough is enough, the board of directors decided to send out a few things to the life members just to clear things up, because a lot of things had been slung back and forth about this, that, and the other, and how things were done shady. So what was sent out was a meeting on October 4th. A special meeting was put together, and we had sent out the chronological order of the meeting. We'd sent out the vote from the February 26th, 2018 meeting. We had sent out a copy of the excuse me, of the just one second, the Constitution of the Brampton Excelsiors Lacrosse Club. The Ella Group was using a 2017 version of this thing that still had the majors in it. I had personally put in the 2019 version, which doesn't have the majors in it, and our up-to-date current Constitution. Also, we had sent, excuse me, a redacted letter from the OLA, because they had kept pretty silent throughout this. This was a leaked letter, but redacted that it had on there recognizing that the board of directors that is currently sitting is the board of directors for the Brampton Excelsiors. So all transparency is there. Everything that we know and we have sent out to the life members. And since then, we haven't heard much back, but that's where it stands now. So it's about rebuilding, trying to get lacrosse back in Brampton under one umbrella. Excuse me, and trying to work everybody together.
So it's difficult at best when it comes to minor sports, Gary, that rely on city funds. You know, it's not just about the stadium; it's also about funds as well that the city might kick in as well. I don't know how much, but is it difficult to generate capital in the best of times for the Brampton Excelsiors as we knew them? And if not, if it's not difficult, was it the pandemic that made this thing? This goes back, from what I'm hearing from you, to 2018. So was this writing on the wall, or was the pandemic the period at the end of the sentence?
No,
this was to happen.
This is a number of years. This is a number of years. Really, you know, you're talking about the last time they won a championship was around 2011, 2010, in and around there. And over the last number of years, they just haven't been, up until the last time they played in Brampton, where they actually were a competitive team again. They really weren't competitive, and they'd had no money to pay players. So obviously, players of good stature and good caliber wanted to go to make money. You know, it is their time and their efforts. And, you know, they had trouble getting the top-notch players anymore. The ones that get were the ones who grew up through the entire program from minor lacrosse on upward, because they do have all the programs and still do. But the majors, once they're pro, a lot of them went to, again, Six Nations, went to Peterborough, who have been the strong horses for the last number of years. Peterborough is still, you know, technically the 3-time champion, still holding that title, because we haven't had a full season yet.
So, Gary, what I'm hearing, and I think I understand, is unfortunately, with, you know, knowing what we know, and for those of you that follow the show and are a part of this and watch the show regularly, I think it's fair to say that there have been changes in the game of lacrosse. The important change, I think, is that the financial side of the game is getting healthier at the top. The problem with that is that what I'm hearing from you, and what this triggers in my mind, realistically or not, it's, you know, we can discuss it, is that it makes it harder for organizations that can't pay players. I mean, I'm hearing that from you, to exist, coexist within those other leagues, and if teams within leagues are different, in other words, they're not all on an equal footing or a level playing field, right? Because if one team in the league is paying their players and another team in the league isn't paying the players, there's a good chance that the players are playing on the team that isn't paying their players are going to want to be on a team that does. So now what we have is we have this situation where there has to be some sort of adjustment that ensures that teams that can't afford to pay players, there's got to be some sort of way of making this work, or is it just the strong shall survive and the weak shall go overboard? Did you hear what I said, Gary? I think we're losing Gary again. Or am I the one who's lost? Well, it looks to me like it's Gary that's
Hi, Frank.
Hey, Gary.
Hey, Gary. Oh, just a second. Let me turn the computer down.
Okay. No, because you're not. It appears I see your picture. I just don't hear you saying anything. So,
And where I can, you're frozen on my screen, and I can hear you clearly. Anyway, what I'm trying to say in this is, here's the timeline for this. The timeline is the last time the Brampton Excelsiors won the Mann Cup was 2011. 2012, there was notification that the team's primary sponsor, Brandon Steele, which sponsor over six figures annually, could no longer continue as the operator and financial funder of the team. They had limited financial support in the transitional year, leading to an exodus of many of the top players. 2013 to 16, more players released to other MSL clubs, and that became a starting of a youth movement to fill the ranks at lower operating costs, because you're looking at $250,000 or so to run a team like this, 2016-17, the city of Brampton changed their criteria to receive annual grant funds, which of $35,000, which made give or take. We reached out for assistance to the community, and of course the board realized the dire situation we found ourselves in. So the decision was made at that point to move from Powerade to Memorial for lower costs. And in 2017, the major team barely made it financially through the season. And it was at that point where people, they started figuring out that it needed to be sold. And Joe Norton's name came up, and onward we went. And the rest, shall we say, is history.
Yeah, and it's a history that's being reviewed. And of course, there's the problem that people within Brampton and or followers of the Brampton Excelsiors and the people who historically have an attachment to the Brampton Excelsiors because of their deep history, as you mentioned, regret their departure. The reality is, though, I get that a lot of people miss the team, but the reality is that minor sports has a cost.
Mm-hmm.
And that cost means that someone has to meet that cost and basically fund the team. And the break-even point, is there a break-even point, or is it impossible, Gary, to at least break even? In other words, find support in the community, whether it be through advertising, local advertising, of course, arena boards, all that stuff, and or ticket sales. Can a team, in your experience, can it at least cover its costs?
It's possible, but it takes an awful lot of work. And, in the summertime, it's already difficult to get people inside arenas. But also, if you take a look at the demographics in Brampton have changed dramatically over the years.
Right.
And you might have a better time having a cricket game than you have a lacrosse game.
Yeah, and we get that, and we get that, and it's the same problem that every sport has all the time, right? It's finding
exactly.
It's finding people that are interested in taking part in that sport. Not every sport can be like the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like the saying is here. I'm not in Toronto anymore. I'm in Simcoe, and I have to remind myself I'm not in Toronto. But it seems, in Toronto, it's not a hockey town, it's a Leaf town. So, it's the same thing with baseball. The Jays are popular when they're playing well, and they're popular and they have some attendance, but even when they're having a good season, are having 11, 12,000 people at times in the stadium. And they have a TV revenue to back them up. The unfortunate truth is that in minor sports in Canada, and I have a lot of experience, as you know, in minor sports in Canada, going back a long ways, it always comes down to funding, because to actually be independent, it's really tough. And this is why you get the owner of the Toronto Rock, Dowick, why he gets so much respect, because to actually make lacrosse profitable is difficult, very, very difficult. But almost as difficult is making lacrosse viable financially. And by viable, I don't mean profitable. I mean at least being able to support the costs that it takes to have a team. So it's difficult. And I don't know. I mean, if we know some people that win the lottery and win a couple of $100 million, they've got a couple of $1 million to spare. They could save a couple of lacrosse teams.
Definitely.
Okay, hey, you're back on. And that's what's important. It's the funding of the.
Just a second, Frank. Let me
get. Yeah.
There we go. I can.
Yeah, it's the funding that is the key. That's the part that that minor sports. It's not just a thing that lacrosse has to go through. So now, as I was saying before we had our problems with the video and the audio, the problem is with people figuring out how to make money with lacrosse. In other words, how to like Jamie does, like I mentioned, Jamie Dowick has figured out how to finance lacrosse in Oakville, which in turn is part of the big picture, which is the team in Hamilton that was in Toronto. There aren't many people like him that can do that.
No, there isn't. Especially to build a facility that he has built and to help out minor lacrosse in Oakville and the whole shebang there. He's grown it tenfold there, especially by having now with the second rink that is now carpeted. Now you have that much more lacrosse going on at that facility, and it's a central facility. So it's easy to get to for a lot of teams. So a lot of tournaments are held there, both professional, junior A, minor league, everything is really held there. So it alleviates a lot of the problems also with trying to find places to play, because that's another thing that's a cost on these teams. So if they have a number of teams playing in there and a number of leagues playing through there, the cost savings is to everybody because he can reduce the costs to everybody.
Yeah, so, and he pays for it once and then reuses it over and over again. He has made a lot of investment in that, what I'll call, and it is a community. He's made a lot of investment there in that community. And within that community, carry on. I just want to make sure I added that part in there. But
even when you're looking at the professional teams, before this place was built, just for an example, somebody who's in a Toronto Rock practice would have to drive out to Six Nations, and they had their practices at the ILA. So to go to Oakville when you're living in Toronto or you're living around Toronto, to have a 20-minute drive instead of an hour and a half drive, especially coming back if you're working the next day after a couple hour practice, that's major. And it being right off the QEW. So it's pretty central and pretty easy to get to for just about anybody from just about anywhere.
In the West End.
In the West End.
In
Sure,
the
but
West
even if you're coming from the East End, you're still just off the QEW. Right?
Yeah,
It's
no,
right.
I realize that, but it's a good 45 minutes an hour to come
Yeah.
from, let's say, Oshawa. Let's say.
Well, just imagine
Scarborough.
how far. Well, just imagine how far it is to go from Oshawa to Six Nations.
Exactly. How far it is to
Downright
go from
impossible.
Oshawa to Kingston. I mean, it is, yeah, the whole point, I think, that is I think what's very important is that what Jamie Dowick has done is he has centralized the whole community in one place. And by community, I mean every different level of lacrosse. People from a lot of, like you said, who are accustomed to driving there to Oakville.
Right.
It's in the greater Toronto area, right? Which also includes, places like Brampton, Mississauga. Those places aren't that far from Oakville. Yes, when we start talking about Scarborough, we're talking about going through and over the whole city of Toronto. I get that. But the point is, it's within the metro area. And without Jamie and what he does, think about that. That's how important Jamie is for what he's done, because he's basically the default. If you want to learn about lacrosse and you have interest in lacrosse, you're gonna make it through the track at some point.
Well, yeah. Well, just take a look when we had the arena lacrosse guys from the West on a couple of weeks ago, and all the entire league is at the Langley Event Center, right? So
That's
that makes
right.
it central for everybody, which is, I think, the wave of the future. And I think Jamie was ahead of the curve on that one.
Well, I think it's the
But
wave of the past and the future. I mean, it's all about economics and the economics of redundancy, like you said. Once you build a place, to schedule another hour of a game is not so difficult if you own the place.
yeah,
But if you're trying to rent floor time, now it
yeah,
gets complicated. And that's the point I was trying to make with Jamie and
right.
what he's done, is that he's there to accommodate lacrosse. He doesn't have to take ice out so that they can play lacrosse.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
dedicated lacrosse facility. It's
Mhm.
24/7 lacrosse facility.
Right.
So he can accommodate you were very happy and then I know lacrosse was very proud of the job he did when they had the tournament there that you talked about.
Yeah.
Something like that doesn't happen at a place that you rent.
No.
It's not going to
No.
happen. So that's why, when you say wave of the future, to me, it's not about a wave, because for me, it's about um,
Well, by saying
an
wave of the
opportunity.
future, what I mean is that you're going to see more and more in different areas do exactly
Right,
the same.
right,
You're
right.
going to see
Because
more of
you know
these
why I'm
properties
saying
pop up.
a wave isn't it? Because in actuality, it's a concentration of
Yeah.
having a place that can justify its existence. And the way the track is justified is that they can play lacrosse there and they can schedule lacrosse there 7 days a week. The
Yeah.
people that are there that run the place actually are lacrosse players who get a chance to make some money so that they can support themselves. It's everything that happens at the track. It's starting to happen in other places, like you
Mhm.
said when we talked about BC, and
Yeah.
we've talked to some Americans as well, where that's becoming a bit of a thing as well. It may not be somebody who's an owner of an NLL team, but it might be somebody who used to be in lacrosse, who has connections in
Right.
lacrosse, and then brings everybody together and says, this is going to be a place where lacrosse matters.
Now, I just want to get back to Brampton one more
Okay.
point or two, and just to clean it up, because like I said, the two groups actually have the majority of their interests are in line with each other, and it's more of an olive branch that I'm looking to do to have everybody work together, because we need to get sponsorships back. We need to get everybody on the same page towards building minor lacrosse in Brampton again and getting the people back to the thing. The infighting has to stop. Hopefully, with all this transparency out there now, that's the end of that, and we can move forward and go forward from there. Again, because the only thing that's really suffering is there's a lot of sponsorships that aren't back yet because of A, COVID, and B, because of all the invite. Nobody knows which way to go. Everything's kind of fractured. Well, hopefully, with all the information out there now, everybody can work together, and then together we can build it all as one again.
And the point you're trying to make, and I'll check, and for the sake of the people watching, the point here is we want to make sure that Norton and Company bought the team to keep lacrosse alive. The
Yes.
decision to move the team was one that was you end up in a situation where you got to try and figure out how to survive. And not everybody's going to like the decision on what is, the other option. Nobody wants to discuss the other option, right, Gary? I mean, everybody wants the Excelsiors to stay where they are or where they should be, which is in Brampton. But unfortunately, the reality is that survival of the organization means they have to go somewhere where they can make economic sense because of what we talked about.
Right. And also, remember, Joe Norton owns the team.
Right.
He owns the team. The team was transferred to him. I don't want to use the word sold because it was transferred to him. And the negotiations were done as the board approved by the president and general manager, as well as the lawyers, to work out the negotiations. Simple. And he moved the team. He moved his team. It doesn't have anything to do with the board of the Brampton Excelsiors anymore. So if anybody wants to try and start an expansion team, there's a great idea. But
either way, it has to come with somebody who can afford to underwrite the team.
That's it too, right? That's it.
That's the
again, we're talking
line.
Demographics. And John Davis making his comment there about 3,500 in Peterborough, and it comes down to marketing. I agree. That is exactly right. But also keep in mind that Peterborough, that hotbed of lacrosse, the demographics really haven't changed. In Brampton, the demographics have changed quite a bit. And John Davis also said Owens Sound would be a stronger presence. Attendance would be really good. I'm waiting to see it because, simply put, I haven't seen it as of yet because they haven't had a chance to play there.
What? That would solve that question. I mean, the answer is outstanding. But I think to the point when we talk about Peterborough, we're talking about a very, I'm not trying to put down the Rock or the Toronto Rock or Jamie Dowick. When I say West, the reality is that's where they are. They're in the western part of Toronto and Ontario, right? Whereas in the east, what's there is Peterborough. And Peterborough is one of the strongholds when it comes to lacrosse, the same way I speak about Jamie Dowick. And if you want to play lacrosse, there's a good chance you're going to go through the track, right? Yep. The same thing's true in the east end of Toronto and east, the east of Toronto, where if you play lacrosse, you're going to go through Peterborough. Right. That's where the bigger team is. That's where the famous team is, if I can use that term, where the roots of lacrosse are strongest, deepest, right? So it's not a question of Peterborough does a better job of the 3,500 fans that are going there. Those aren't people they just invited and worked on, and last year they came in. These are people who for decades, family member after family member has been a part of the Peterborough experience. And in Brampton, the point that Gary's trying to make, and I agree with him 100%, the fan base is being diluted in Brampton. Even though it's growing, the lacrosse fan base isn't growing, but that is normal in what we're talking about. You have new Canadians who know nothing about a sport, And of course, they're not going to automatically go, oh, we're supposed to go watch lacrosse. They're going to bring their own likes and dislikes. They're going to bring their own ideas of what they consider being a fan is, and what teams they think and games they think are important. So there's a job that lacrosse has to do to make itself more ethnically friendly, and it's not that people in lacrosse don't want to have these people come in.
Right.
That's not what it's about. What it's about is, how do you reach them? Where do you go? Marketing sounds really easy. That's an easy answer. I'm a little angry with that remark, because marketing is a lot more complicated than just spending a couple of bucks. You really have to figure out who might be a lacrosse fan, and spend and basically focus the money that you've got, which is not unlimited, and try to hit that. It's like hitting a target, right, Gary? I mean, you have to know who your base can be, not just who it is.
Right.
It's great.
Exactly.
In Peterborough who your base is, in Oakville who your base is, but how do you figure out how you get to people who have not been a part of a cause?
Now, what also hasn't helped any is COVID. The last couple of years have both been write-offs. You haven't been able to have any minor league lacrosse because we've had all the restrictions. You can only have 5 people on a field, so you couldn't bring out, to bring out the newbies, the young kids out there. Yes, minor league lacrosse is still very, 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 very good, and it's still growing. But when you don't have anything for a couple of years, people forget quickly. And other things take place.
And then, we've heard how many times have we heard this story? Well, I went to school and this guy was playing this game lacrosse, and I saw this lacrosse stick and I thought it was really interesting. He said, "You want to come check it out?" And I went and checked it out. I've been playing lacrosse for 20 years. I'm a Hall of Famer. That story starts with you getting an opportunity to see the game. And as a young child, if there's no school, how are you going to, we talk about, on our other show, and I'll make it real quick, we talk about, how children need to get together. This is one of the reasons. Children get together and they identify for each other what's fun, what we can do. Well, that's gone. That communication, that ability to share an experience is gone, which is why it's so important kids go to school. And that's one of the why the challenge of the pandemic is so difficult. The opportunity to interrelate is gone. Zero. Nada.
Yeah, it's not like it petered off. It's just done.
Gone.
And now history. Again, so sponsorships, because who's paying for sponsors for putting any money into it?
Going on, Gary.
When there's nothing happening, right? Exactly. So now everything has to start ground level, and we have to start building it. And like I say, with a fractured organization, it's not going to work. So I am hoping against hope, that we can all work together and build this thing back up again to be stronger than ever it was. And using our smarts and using social media and using marketing and using ethnicities to help and be inclusive to everybody, that we can build this thing to be as strong as Peterborough and to include more and more, to be a more diverse thing. Because in the long run, the game wins. The game wins. We've talked about it on a professional level to get this thing out there so people actually know the game, period. Well, we've done that. We got people to see the game, and lo and behold, people are watching. Isn't that funny how that worked? Gee.
Yeah,
but now
Gary,
we can try and put that into a minor league thing too, and try and market it that way to get the kids out. Because remember what I said, if you get the kid out, you don't sell 1 ticket, you sell 5 tickets. And you build the game for the future.
The bottom line is what has to happen now. While you can't play the games, you can't promote the games by having games. What now has to happen, people like yourself that are part of organizations, it's incumbent upon them to prepare and to figure out and to lay out a plan on how to reach people, because there's also an opportunity here, Gary, because every organization, every league, every sport is suffering the same way, right? That now there's there's a bunch of people out there. It's like, remember when we finally had some live sporting events that people could go and
Right.
participate in? How crazy! Oh, great! I'm going to, and it didn't matter what it was that was live. Everybody wanted to go to that because we haven't been to a live sport in so long. So, and we talked about that with lacrosse as well, right? With lacrosse coming back.
Right.
So, what
So
you're
my
talking about
big
is
point,
100% right. Yeah.
if you remember, my big point on that one was the teams have this time right now, so they need to get it in aligned and market it correctly so that when they do come back, they're there.
Have a
And now the
plan.
same thing needs to happen with minor league lacrosse. All the minor
Now's-
lacrosse, everybody has to get their plans together now.
Now's the time to plan. Now's the
Yeah.
time to make sure that you can do something. Now's the time to make sure that you understand what it'll take, and then try to figure out. And it's hard. And this is what, unfortunately, we can't appreciate because we don't get an invitation into those boardrooms where people are talking. And we can talk to lacrosse folks, and we've listened to some of the things that they're trying to do, and they've figured out different ways. We talked about different tournaments. We've talked about, or way to modify how your league operates, road leagues, road warriors, if you will. All those different experimentations, they were all done for the purpose of trying to keep the game alive in people's minds.
Right. And I agree with Johnny Davis's take on this thing too about Lakertown, because I've been there many times, and it is Lakertown. Peterborough is Lakertown,
Exactly.
and it always will be Lakertown. And yes, yeah, I may need to live there to appreciate it, but you know what? As an outsider coming in, you just take a look at it and go,
You don't have to. You don't have to. You don't have to live in Peterborough to appreciate it. Anybody that follows lacrosse even a little understands when you talk lacrosse, you're talking Peterborough. In Ontario, it's like the salmon bellies in BC.
exactly.
They're just, if you know anything about lacrosse, there are championships that are played that are national in scope, and those names come back over and over again. And Brampton was one of those teams.
Yeah.
That's the sad part.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, before we end, I just want to wish everybody a very happy New Year, a safe New Year, and let's hope that 2022 is going to be the year that we right the ship on everything, and life itself and everything else.
Well, Gary, I tell you, we weren't looking forward to this, and that is a week off, week 5. We started with bad news, and on a good news front, I hope everyone out there has a very happy New Year's. Take care of yourselves. Take care of everybody, and be careful. Is the most important thing I can say is be careful. And I truly believe if you get vaccinated, you can help and make this pandemic an endemic, and we can end the pandemic and make it an endemic. That would be great, because we're paying for it in ways that we're being denied things we love. And lacrosse is one of the things that we love. And it can't happen because the virus has a free ride in too many ways. So for Gary Grube, Gary, thank you for doing this. And I'm sorry about your internet.
Yes, I am too. It's nice and full now. It works just great, but brought to you by the people of Ignite. It's what it is.
Maybe we should talk to Rogers about how would they like a better commercial for their stuff. Thank you, Gary Grube.
Thank you very much, Frank, and it's been a pleasure. The year was fantastic, talking lacrosse week after week after week with guests galore of everything from current to commissioners to current players to Hall of Famers. It's been spectacular, and I love the opportunity, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very, very much.
It's well earned, and Eduardo Harari says thank you, even though you can't hear him say that.
My privilege and my pleasure.
It's mine too. I really appreciate your contribution, and I appreciate the enthusiasm for a sport that deserves it. And hopefully it'll be bigger and better come January. And if we have a little bit of a tough road, folks, power through, because when February comes around, I think for sure things are going to get better. It may not get better till then. It's not because I want to give you bad news, folks, but I'm just saying, hang in there, be patient. Again, this is something that it comes looking for us, and you're only as strong as your weakest link. And the strength in the link is the virus. being held back by vaccines. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Also, thank you to John Davis for all of his input. Appreciate
absolutely. Yeah, Don, thanks a lot. For Gary Grube, I'm Frank Stanishi. Thanks for watching Lacrosse Talk. And of course, Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Lacrosse Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.